In this tutorial, I'm going to cover how to make a menu screen. So we have on this one, we have the title screen where you put the game title, and then we have two buttons here, start and options. So if I were to press play, you can see that as I hover the mouse over top, we have two different effects going on, the mouse over effects. So I'll cover how to do the mouse option where you have the mouse, and also cover how to use the keyboard if you want to use your keyboard to go up and down. And for the video also, explain it first, and then I'll walk through later in the video step by step. So for those of you who are familiar enough with Unity at this point, you can just get a quick recap of how Playmaker works, and then I'll actually go button for button through it. Alright, so how it works right now, we have the start menu and options. So if I click the options button, it goes through the options screen. You can see how it kind of explains the buttons for the game and the main menu. This one is text-based, whereas this one is drawing sprite. So you can use either or, text or drawing your own words. And if I press the start button here, it loads the game. Cool, so let's jump back there. And I also have a keyboard option. So if I load up it's a separate scene that has a keyboard, it'll correspond to the same thing with clicking the keyboard, which is the same thing. Cool. So let's explain how all this works now. So if I go to the main screen right here, if I click on the start button, you can see that there's a large collision box on here. So on top the main start sprite, which I have in the sprites folder down here. So I just grab the start button sprite, which is this one, just the start button. Actually, that one, start. So I take the start, I put it on here, and so when I click on this, there's the sprite renderer, which has the sprite image, the animator, we'll get back to that one. Then we have the Playmaker coding, we have a 2D box collider in here, so the box is the clickable range. There's also the option to use buttons, but I'll cover that a little bit later. I can mention it now. So we go to the create, you can create a UI element and put a button right here, but the button doesn't, from what I can tell, allow you to put animation to it. It's just a single sprite image. So if you're just looking for an image transition, great, but the one I have here now is actually animated. So, alright, so I take the start button, and then the options button has the same thing. So between these two, so I click on start, and then we have here the FSM has a mouse click state. Mouse click FSM. So on the mouse click, it's really easy. We just have a mouse pick 2D event. So you go through your actions panel from the actions browser, and you go pick through until you find the mouse to pick 2D event. In this case, we're going to click the mouse up button. So usually when you're going through internet or whatever else you're clicking on, usually when you release the click of the mouse, that's when it moves to the next state. But you can set it to mouse down, so as soon as it pushes down, you don't have to release it. As soon as you push down, it goes to the next state. But in this case, I have it set to the mouse up the usual way. And then as soon as you release the mouse up, and the only way for it to, or how it detects what's being clicked on, is that the collision box is on that sprite, and since the start button has the code on it, it detects that I'm hitting the collision area. Otherwise, you could click, I guess, anywhere on the screen and it would just do that. So we want to kind of refine it to only occurring at that point. And we want to check this every frame as well, so that it always looks for when you're clicking. And then we go to the load level, and it loads the next level. So real easy. We click on the next one, options button, and the same thing, same code, mouse pick 2D event. When you click the options collision box, it loads the next one, which in this case is the options level. So if I scroll up here, you can see there's the options level. And then if I go back to the start menu, so these work for the clicking aspects. Let's go change this FSM over to the mouse over FSM. The mouse over, there's two states in this one. I can press the hints button right here, and it kind of hides those extra boxes. That leaves a little more room for you guys to see what's on the screen right here for me. So I have the mouse pick 2D event, which is the same thing I had before, except in this case it's the mouse over. And if I have this on the same FSM, then it's kind of looking for two things at once, so it's just easier to put them on two separate FSMs. So we're going to repeat the same action though. So this is the mouse over, which goes from finished over to the mouse over, and now it's going to check if the mouse is off, and then it goes back over to here. So it's going to be constantly checking between mouse over and mouse off. Now what happens when it's on the mouse over state is that it's going to actually it's waiting for the mouse over, which means the mouse is currently off of the button. So in this case, the animator bool is set to false, so it's not going to play the animation. Or in this case, if I click it, now the mouse must be over top of it because it's over. It's asking for if it's over on here, and it moved to this state, and now it's going to be saying the value must be true. And so with those two, the true and false options, if we go over to the animator, we have the start state, which is basically just an image of start, and then the start button is going to play the animation for the sword and the shine of the sword sliding across the blade. So that's the animated section. So it's going to switch between these two. The default state is just the start word, nothing, no sword behind it. So what affects the transition is that we have the over boolean. So when that occurs, we'll scroll down here. You can see that there's the over option. If over is true, that the mouse is over it and is set it true in the animator in the FSM code, then it'll go to the start button and wait for the condition for it being false, and it goes back here. So you're switching between the two animations on the animator controller. And that should pretty much cover how that works. And so both codes are on the buttons themselves for the, and the rest is decoration. So we have the image back here, which is just kind of decorating the background. If I were to move this, let's say, you can see it's just a decoration of the background. I have two little text glow options just to make the words stand out a little more. So that's all how that works. And the camera's regular, it just kind of shows the screen. So that's how you set all that up. Let's cover real quick how to set up the keyboard. Alright, so if I load up this scene, it looks pretty much the same. The main difference is that I have the code on the title screen now. You can put the code for the keyboard anywhere you want. You could put it on the start buttons. I left the mouse click code on the start buttons and the options button. Both of these have the mouse click and the mouse over, so they'll both concurrently work. The downside to having the mouse clicks and the title screen is that when I were to press play, the mouse over it doesn't highlight on this one because the keyboard's also doing it. So if I leave the mouse off here, notice the keyboard up and down, it works just fine. But if I leave the keyboard here and I hover over top, it doesn't turn off the keyboard functionality if it's still being lit up. So that doesn't, so you probably don't need the mouse click at that point. You could probably code it to say if the mouse moves, then deactivate the keyboard, but either way. So how this works is that you don't have to necessarily put it on the sprite screen. You could put it on empty if you want, just as like a basic controller or something. But either way, what's happening is that the code, which is pretty much just the screen, just the menu buttons, FSM, is going to run through code as you're playing. So none of the sprites are going to be changing. So if I press play now, you can see that I'm starting on the green state, and as I use the keyboard, let's say I press down, it goes to the options, and if I press down, if I had a third button, for example, which I don't, but if I had three buttons, you can see that it would transition through all of these. And as I'm going down to number 2, you can see it highlights number 2. So all it's doing is changing sprites, but the code itself isn't on any particular sprite, it's just I throw it in the background. So if I turn that off, what's happening now is that on the start state, we're getting some visibilities and some get keys. So I'll mention the get keys first. So if you press the return key, it goes to finish, which is load level 1, and if you press the down key, it goes to the next state. So it's helpful to put the states in the same order as your wording up here, just so you can kind of visualize what's happening, but it doesn't necessarily matter. Alright, so if I press enter, it goes to load the next level. If I press the down key, it goes to the options, where again it's checking press up, then go to the up event, which will send you back to the start. And if you press the down key, it'll go down to the next button. And if you press enter, it'll go to the finished and load the menu option. So just pressing up and down keys, which works great that you're moving up and down, but the downside is you don't know what is highlighted at this time. That's what the visibility is set for. So if we go back to the start visibility, we're going to set the visibility of the start button over to visible because we're starting on the start button. And we're going to set the options button over to not visible. So options is right here. So you're going to get the sword. What happens is I have the sword button over is this one. Essentially, it's an icon of the sword, whereas this start button is just the word itself. So I have the word. I could delete the Playmaker code off here. I don't need this. I just need a sprite that says the basic word start, and then I need a sprite that has the sword going through it. And this one has the animation on it as well. So that's the animation controller. Alright, so if I go back to the title screen, all it's doing is saying the icon with the sword turns on for start, and the icon with the sword turns off for the options. But if I press the down key and it goes to here, it reverses the two. So the start button with the sword turns off, and if the sword turns on for this one. And if I press down one more time, it should turn off the other one, but since I don't have a third option, it was just for the purpose of showing that I can have multiple keyboard buttons going up and down. So that covers how to use the keyboard up and down to get keys and set the visibility. So when I press play, so right now set visible for the sword is on for the start button, and it's off for the options. If I press down, it set the start visibility for the sword over, which is the sword there, to off, and this one to on. Cool, and the same thing applies for the animator code. In this case, we'll go to this one. So the over button just needs one state. It just needs the constantly playing animation. You don't need to transition between whether there's a transition effect or a boolean or anything. It's just play or turn on the sprite that has the animation versus the sprite that doesn't have the animation. And again, if I delete the Playmaker code, you wouldn't need the switching. The switching is just because the Playmaker code's on there. Cool. And that covers how that all works. You can pick and choose which option you want, mouse or keyboard. And so let me walk through. That's it. So let's walk through the how the Playmaker code, or how to make the code for the mouse click option. All right. So let's go back to the main menu screen. All right. So in this one, actually let's jump projects. I'll start over. So where we last left off with, we had the HUD over here, the heads-up display. So now we're going to create a new scene for the menu. So I'm going to go over here to create new scene, and we're going to call this the menu scene. All right, and in the menu scene, we're going to load the menu scene. And I might as well keep things organized. Let's drag this inside of here, inside the scenes folder. All right, so I have a menu scene inside here. It starts off blank. There's nothing in here. And you can decorate this as much as you want. The first thing I need to do is go and grab some sprites. So I'm going to take the start button and the options, and I might as well take the animations as well. So I'll take all four of these, and I can come back for the other ones. This one's just a title screen background. This one's a glow for the text, and this one's the keyboard buttons to show you what's on the options screen. So I'll take all four of these, drop these into the sprites folder. It should fill up the sprites folder now. So we have options blinking, the options word, start, and start blinking. So let's go take the start button. I'll throw this into the scene. It's right there. Let's make that probably, I could make it bigger, or I could change the camera. The camera I'm running on the other one's camera size I have set for 2, so I might as well be consistent and set that to 2. So that should zoom in a bit more. So I click back on here. Let's zoom in some more. Go to move. I'll put it here and kind of towards the center. All right, and let's take the options button, throw this in the scene as well. Move this down here. So I have start and options. Now I'm going to need a collision on these two. So let's go add component physics 2D box collider, and that puts a box collider in start. Let's repeat for the options, physics 2D box collider. Cool, so now it's collision on both of these. And now let's put the code on them. So we'll add component, playmaker FSM. So this FSM we'll call mouse click. So we're going to check for the clicking state. So on clicking event. So on state number 1, we're going to add mouse pick 2D event. So I'll drop this one on here, and we're going to say when since we're using the click event right now, so when the mouse is, I guess the mouse is up. So you can change this. We're going to need to add the transition first. So add transition finish. So you right click and you can reveal your transitions. Mouse up, so that's finished. So when you release the mouse button comes up. We're going to go to the next state. So add state, right click and add state. Drag finished over to here. And then on state number 2, actually I should probably name this one. State 1 should be mouse click. And this one we'll call load level. Alright, so we're going to click it. It's going to check for the collision, and when the mouse button is released, load level, we'll call load level. And here you type in whatever name you have. You have to use the exact letter for letter specific. So spaces, capitals, everything matters. Tutorial 1 dash movement. Alright, so that's the same exact spelling, spacing, lettering, everything. So it'll load this level. The other problem is when you press play, just because you typed it here doesn't mean it'll work. If I try pressing play right now, this might not work. Let's say I click on this and, oops, out of scene mode, start mode. Yeah, it won't load the level. The reason is because it's not sitting in the build settings. So if you go over to File, Build Settings, you need to have this level in there. So I'm going to drag this one in here. So now that it's in the build settings, now when you click load level, it'll actually load. So let's close that back out and try this again. So I press play. And so now when I click the start button, it's checking for the start click state. I click it and it loads level 1. Alright, really easy, real simple. Let's do that for options real quick, just to repeat. So I can take all this. I can take the entire FSM basically, so the mouse click, right click, copy component, jump over to the options button, and right click and paste component as new. So now I have the mouse click state added to options. The only difference is I need to change what gets loaded. I don't have the options seen, so I'll just say that I guess I'll call this 7 HUD. So assuming I had the option seen, it would load that. So if I press play now, because I copied the effect, options should load up. Oh yeah, I haven't thrown that into the build settings. But as you can see, that would go through that. Alright, so let's go over to the next state. We need to put on the mouse over states. So it's really simple to make it click back and forth. You can go through and click different options, really easy. But if you want to have that animated state, and again you could use create UI buttons. If I put a button on here instead of doing this process which I just did with the sprites, the button works, but you're only going to get one sprite. It doesn't give you the option to pick a animated image. And the same thing, you can change like the color, the tint, and how the button affects when you go over top of it, but it's not going to play that animated shine across the sword that I did. So that's what a button does. So I'm going to delete that one out. So on the start state, I'm going to create a new FSM. So add component, new playmaker FSM. Alright, so on this FSM, I guess I could have added one here. So we'll go to this new one that I just made, and we're going to call this new FSM mouse over. So now I have the difference between the mouse click and the mouse over. Alright, so on this one, state number 1, we're going to call mouse off. So the mouse is off of it, it's not currently sitting on top of it. We're going to put another mouse pick 2D event. In this case, we're going to check whether the mouse is over. If the mouse is over, I need to right click, add transition finished, and now I can reveal it here. So if the mouse is over, then go to the next state. So right click add state. Let's call this state mouse over. Left click drag the finished onto here, and then add transition finished. Right click to get that and send it back. Oops. Alright, so now I have the finished state here. And so the same thing we're going to need, we could just even copy this if we want to, or just drag a new one in here and set the mouse off state to finished. So when the mouse leaves the button, it goes back over here. So we're going to switch between the two. So really easy to do. So the next step is we need to control the animations. So we're going to need some animator variables on that. Animator, no, not get, we need set, or I could just type in bool. Set animator bool. So let's drag this one here, and it requires an animator component, so sure, let's throw one on there. So clicking that will throw the animator component onto your sprite. So we have the, in this case, we want to say the value is, I guess, false, and we need a parameter, so I'm going to call the parameter over. So when the mouse is over, it's false because it's not currently over in this state. We want to do this, also the pick2d event, we want to check every frame, but the set bool doesn't need to be every frame, just a one-time thing. Let's go back over to here, repeat, set animator bool, and this one's going to be true for the same value. So over is currently true at this point because the mouse is sitting over it. When the mouse leaves it and goes to finished, now that variable is set to false. Alright, everything's all set up now. We just need to put some animation on here. So let's go put on, actually, we could test it real quick. So we're playing. You can see that as I'm switching back and forth, if the mouse is over or not, it goes back to each state. And if I were to click on these things, click on start, it jumps right into the level. Perfect. So everything works. We just need to put some animations. So to do that, we need to click on the sprite that has the animation, or that will have it. Actually, we need to slice up the sprite first. So let's go to the start blinking sprite. It has all these stacked kind of vertically. This way, instead of having super long sprites, since these are kind of wide, I just stack them vertically to conserve space. So let's go single to multiple. So there's going to be multiple sprites in this image. Now that I set it to multiple, I can go to sprite editor, apply the changes. And so now I have this. With Unity 5.3, you should have the option for grid by cell counts. That's usually easier. You just say 1 column, 6 rows, done. If you don't have Unity 5.3, you won't have the count option. You just have to pick your sizes and figure out this is 64 pixels, so you just mark it. But I always cell count and say there's 1 column, 6 rows of sprites, and then press slice, and it automatically slices it out for me, nice and easy. Close out that, press apply. So it's sliced, start blinking. Let's repeat for options, so multiple, sprite editor, apply, slice, 6, apply. Good. Alright, so all those are set now. Let's go back to the start state. So the sprite's been cut out and ready. If I go over to the animator tab, right now we're on the character, so let's click on start again, or not. So let's scroll down here. We need an animator controller. There should already be one because it created one on the mouse over state. Or maybe it didn't. Okay. So the start button looks like it doesn't have an animator controller, so let's go make an animator controller. So create animator controller. It looks like it just added the component but not the actual controller. We'll call this start controller. Sure. This should probably get dragged into the animation folder. Animations. Boom. Keep things organized again. So the start controller, click on this thing, will now pop up here. And let's go back to the start menu. The start icon back in the scene. So, oops, animation window. If your windows aren't here, the animator and animations, they're going to be under here. The animation and the animator. So it opens these up. I don't have any animations yet, so I'm going to create one. So let's create one. Since I'm currently selected on the sprite, I have the option to do that, and there's already an animator controller. Let's make this animation in the animations folder. Call this start blinking. Cool. Alright, start blinking is on. That's the animation, and we're going to add in our sprites. So I slide down here to start blinking. I should be able to just grab the main sprite, which pulls all of them in. So grab this one, drag it to here, and it should put all of them in there. Right now it's kind of zoomed in. I'll set my frame rate to, say, 8 frames. Alright, so zoomed it into 8, but looks like it only grabbed the one image. So let's delete that one image. Now let's just grab 1 through 5, or 0 through 5. Alright, so dropped them all in there. The way I had animated the sprite, I have these with a gap of 1 between it, and then this one has a gap of 1 to the end. And right now it's going to stop on 7. It's not going to hold that extra frame, but we can test it and see if it works. So if I press play, you can see that it blinks. So it goes across. Actually, it looks like I don't need, this one should be back here, which I need 1 extra frame right there. If you need that extra frame, you can slide this forward to, I guess, that one, and you can mark with this button right here, add event, and it pops in that extra frame. So now when I press play, you can see it holds the shine for an extra frame. So I have the animation occurring the way I want it to look. And now I'm going to go over to, actually I might as well add one more. I'll jump to here first. So I have start blinking. That's the default state, which I don't necessarily want. I want one more state. So right click, create state empty. And this state, I'm going to right click and say make this set as layers default. So this is going to be the non-blinking state. So that's blinking. This one I'm going to call just start. And because I can't put a sprite right here, it wants a motion, it wants an animation, I have to go back and create a new animation. Let's go back to the animation, and since they already created one, it should have the option for start. I guess not. I just named one, I didn't actually create one, it looks like. So let's create a new clip, and I'm going to call this the start. And it's already in the animations folder, so let's press enter on that. So now I have a new start animation, which is simply just the start state. Throw this in here. Doesn't matter if it's 60 frames or not. I can set this back to 8 to be consistent, but it's only 1 frame, so that's all I need. Alright, so that's set. Let's go back to the animator. So now that I have this, this is running just the start animation. This is running start blinking. And now we need a transition between these two. So right click, make transition down to here so it knows to go from the non-blinking to the blinking. And if you click on a line, what's going to change that is the conditions. So we need a condition. So let's add right here, if you might be on layers or conditions. So parameters, we'll get our condition. Click the plus sign and we set it to a bool. And this one we called over. So make sure it's spelled letter for letter, uppercase, lowercase, spaces, everything the same you had in the Playmaker code when we typed it up here. So it's set to over. That's not, you could check it to say which one the initial starting state is, I think. But we don't need to worry about that. So I left it off. So we're going to say if the condition is true, then go to start blinking. And make transition, right click for that, up to here. And say the same thing on this line. So click that, add transition. If the over is false, so it's no longer true, then go back to start if it's not on there anymore. And that should cover the transitions. We also want to get rid of exit time because we want the transition to play not when the sprite finishes playing. And I don't want any duration because that sometimes clips out the animations. So let's go back to this one. So no exit time and no duration. Alright, cool. That's all set up. So if I were to press play at this point, it should play the animation. So there's nothing there, and if I hover over top, it plays through the blinking or shine across the animation, and if I release, it goes across. So it's switching between the two. This is only 1 frame long. You can see it's playing really, really fast. I could even set the speed to 0, and it should still be fine if I set the speed to 0, because it is only 1 frame, and press play. But I can't put a sprite here. So now it just stops on that state right there, so it doesn't matter. So you don't have to see that blinking all the time. It doesn't really matter how that works. Alright, so the last thing is to recreate all this again for the options. To save us some time, we can just create or duplicate. So this is the start controller. I'm just going to press Control D while selected on this, and it'll duplicate. So Control D for duplicate. I'm going to click this slowly, and I should rename it. This is going to be the options controller. So save some time that way. So now I have the options controller. So start controller, options. I need to put the options controller on the options sprite. So we need to go and put another animation controller. I could copy it, but it's probably easier just to go add component. Animator controller. And then we'll take the options controller, drag it on top of here. So now it has the options controller. And since I'm on options, it's running the same thing as start and start blinking. I'm just going to change these now. So if I click on, oops, lost that, back to options. Looks like it didn't keep it even after duplicating. Oh well. So we need 2 animations again, so same thing. Let's run over here, kind of repetitive. Or I could just not bother doing all that again. So I think you guys get the idea. You can just repeat what I just did for the start state and just go through and click these things again. So you click on, just like we had the start options, go to the options here and create a new animation. So now that we're on the options, you go and drag your sprites back on here, create the 2 different sprites, and then go back to the animator and code both those in with the transitions, and that would cover that. So in the end, you press play, and you'll get the mouse overs, assuming you put the animator controller on that. Whether you click them, I didn't load that level. Looks like it broke the code. Cool. And that should be pretty much how you make the menus. I'm not going to cover the keyboard option because we don't need to worry about that. And again, decorating, we just pick whatever sprites you want to make them look pretty. For keyboard, it's the same thing for the wherever that scene went. So the keyboard scene, open up this. The mouse over, same thing, you're going to need the animator, or you don't need the transitions there. Cool, and I guess that's about it for the menu making. Hopefully all that makes sense. And good luck.